since you mentioned McTaggart, the philosophy of time, or just questions about time, seem like they might constitute a good case study for helping us distinguish a bit between science and metaphysics. Interestingly, a lot of scientists that I speak with about philosophy, where philosophy comes up, such as Leonard Susskind, anything that they don't like, they call metaphysics. So they lump in questions about that we might ask about time with astrology or ghosts or phantasms. So they have for a philosopher, a non-standard use of the word metaphysics. But what sorts of questions about time would constitute scientific questions, and what kind might constitute metaphysical questions?
That's a really good question. Just parenthetically, I've never met Leonard Susskind personally. I gather you have.
Oh, yeah.
I've thought sometime when I was at Stanford, thought about finding his door and knocking on it if he has a door still at Stanford.
I could lead you right to it.
Okay, because I've gone through his lectures. His lectures are great, but the feeling you get about him, and this you might find interesting for what you're asking about, the feeling you get about him and many, many other scientists is that they really don't want to talk to philosophers.
They don't.
Because philosophers, not all scientists are like that. Sean Carroll, who you probably have talked to, is a big exception. Or I can think of other scientists like that. I mean, Shelley Goldstein's another example. He's a mathematician, but but there are others who are not like that. But and that's because they learned early on that there are certain questions that you just don't want to address. Like if you ask Leonard Susskind, look, the fundamental equations of physics, dynamics of physics, they're temporally symmetric, aren't they, Leonard? And he'd say, yeah. Schrodinger's equation is temporally symmetric, and you might have to specify a little bit more what you mean by that. So that any sequence of macroscopic events that happen in one temporal direction that are compatible to laws, they can happen in the opposite temporal directions, compatible to laws. So you'd have to say yes. But look, we look around the world. We never see people coming out of their graves and growing younger. We never see ice cubes, forming out of warm water. Our world is all full of temporal asymmetries. And of course, what grounds that? Where does that come from? Now, there's the idea, and you'll talk to David, I'm sure, about this because he's the world expert on this, that it somehow is connected to statistical mechanics in some way. That's right. But physicists don't really like to get into this very much or really delve into it in a way that really gets at the bottom of it, as I think Leonard Susskind wouldn't. I'm not sure, he probably knows more about this than most, but many wouldn't. Or in quantum mechanics is the famous example. As I'm sure you know, as you've talked to Tim and David, and I think even me a little bit about, is the famous measurement problem in quantum mechanics. Well, that's a problem. It was pointed out by a physicist originally, by Schrodinger and Einstein originally. Physicists wanted to sweep it under the rug, and it took philosophers to keep taking it out from under the rug and saying, we got to think about this, and it really is actually central and important to understanding what quantum mechanics is about. So here, there's a smooth connection between physics and philosophy of physics, where the philosophers of physics were doing what the physicists should have been doing, really, in my view.